Welcome to the BasePath podcast, brought to you by New England Baseball Journal. Mike Gambino is back with us after a year in Happy Valley, coaching the Penn State Nittany Lions. Mike, thanks so much for taking the time. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate you having me, and I appreciate everything that you do for college baseball, for baseball in New England and the Northeast. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, that's nice of you to say. Now, I know, so you kind of are still entangled in the Northeast. You got some guys on your team from the area. You're recruiting in the area. What's the transition been like from BC to Penn State? What are some of the biggest differences? What are some of the similarities?
Well, I will tell you, one of the differences got me in, I was here probably about a week, and I was pulling into campus, and I had to wait for a second. It was a little bit slow getting into the field here. And obviously in Boston, traffic we're used to that. But I was stuck behind a tractor pulling a trailer with some pigs from our ag school here. And that was something that I was not used to in Boston. The transition in general has been absolutely amazing. This town, State College, the people in this town, the people in the athletic department, have been absolutely amazing. My family, it was funny, my wife and I were walking in town the other day. We had lunch together the other day, and we were walking by a place, just walking through the town and walking by a place that we had lunch when we first got down here. And I said, it's funny, when we remember how stressed we were making this decision. Moving your family is a big move, right? Going to a new place is a big move. And we were both, she was coaching field hockey at Boston College. BC was my alma mater. I had been there for 13 years, I believe it was. And that was a really hard decision at the time. And leaving players that I love and, the alma mater, leaving my alma mater and the alumni there with all my friends. There's a lot of stuff about leaving Boston College that was really, really hard and emotional for both of us. I said, remember where we were, and then to think about if we knew then what we know now, how much easier of a decision this would have been, because, personally and professionally, we were both so happy. Our kids have transitioned. They absolutely love this town. Like I mentioned, this town, the people here, the athletic department, it's a great place to live. It's a great place to work. And it's an awesome place to go to college.
Yeah, I know. It's great to hear that you're enjoying it so much and your family's having a great time there. I remember when you were leaving, or, that kind of last summer, there was a lot of talk about the resources, and Penn State was willing to kind of make the investment and really provide those resources to run a top tier D1 program. And BC, is a little bit different, the assistant coach salaries were kind of an issue over the years. And it's a a New England, I would say, D1 program in a lot of ways, although the facilities have, improved a lot when you were there. Have you found the resources to be what you were expecting at Penn State?
Well, I will say BC, Todd Intonato is going to do an amazing job there. That program, I think, got himself and it's gotten itself to a spot where it can be elite. Todd is going to absolutely crush it there. I'm really excited for the future of Boston College. And Todd and Matt Conway, the administrator there, they're going to continue to grow it, and they're going to continue to do amazing things. Like you talked about, with Harrington Athletic Village and with the Pete Frady Center, it's, BC is poised to do some really, really good things. So I think, those are sort of two separate conversations. I'm excited about the future, of Boston College and Boston College baseball. As far as here at Penn State, Pat in the hiring process, and obviously I had a great relationship with Pat and knew Pat from working for him before, and Vinny James, our administrator. Yeah, the conversations are, we want to go to Omaha. So let's look at what we need to do to build out a program, an organization, a really, really good player development organization. Let's be able to use the portal when we need to, and let's win. And I tell you what, man, the fan base here, the students, the alumni have embraced it. This has always been a program. Rob Cooper did a great job here for a long time, but it was a program that was under-resourced. And Pat and Vinny changed that. And the term that had been used a lot, talking about Penn State, over the years was, sleeping giant or a chance to be a monster and all these things. And even when I got here, all the people in the town, the fans, the students were like, "Hey man, it's like, are we really investing in baseball? Is this going to be real?" I'm like, "Yeah," like I talked about, moving your family is no joke, right? And so for anybody in college baseball, when you have a chance to, when you're moving your family, it's got to be a place that you can really believe in. And there's leadership here that I tremendously believe in. And so from a resource standpoint, we believe that we are putting ourselves in a position to compete at the highest level. And it's funny that we talked about sort of in the first press conference, hosting regionals and winning championships, and this is where we want to go. And I think there's a little bit of like, oh, we really talking about this here? And and we are, and we're excited about it. And I think when people see really what the club's going to look like this year, and the guys that, the noise we've been making in the portal, we had a huge commitment last night from an in-state outfielder that is going to create some waves. And I think we had a chance to be really, really good next year, and my goal is just to make sure I stay out of the way and don't mess it up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was saying to when we first jumped on here before we started this podcast, you get busy with the high school and the prep season and the New England D1, D2, D2, D3 programs, and you kind of get in your own world here. And I kind of lost track of you guys. So I want to make sure our audience is aware of how you guys did at Penn State this season. You finished 29-24. You started 8-12 in the Big Ten, and then ran off wins in your last 4 Big Ten games to make the Big Ten tournament. Then you upset top-seeded Illinois in the opener, won back-to-back games against Michigan. So you made it to the Big Ten tournament championship for the first time since 2000. So it had to be, a very impressive first year for you with the program. What are the expectations now? Obviously, you're talking Big Ten championships, those types of things. How did that first season kind of square with what your expectations were going in?
I think, what we wanted to do, making the Big Ten tournament in year one was important to us. And we honestly, like in looking at the team going, we thought it'd be close. We thought it was going to come down the last weekend. It was, there was not anything that surprising sort of at that point of it. We also believed that if we got in, we would have a chance to win it. We talked to the boys about it. They believed that. So I think we were, sort of internal expectations. We believed we had a chance to compete. We did. I think external expectations were way lower. And understandably so, right? But the thing that we talked about to the guys is like, you talk about your standards and how you expect, what you expect within the program, how we're going to go about our business, how we're going to work. The external expectations, that's all noise, right? And we didn't care last year when people didn't think we were going to be any good. And if people think we're going to be good this year, we don't care either. Like we're going to care about ourselves and the controllables. The thing that we had to embrace a little bit last year, and I said this to the team, I don't want us to be a program that falls into the nothing to lose, nobody thinks we can win, prove everybody wrong. I don't want us to be that long term. I want us to believe we're going to go to the ballpark, and people think, again, who cares what people think, but I want us to believe the ballpark. We're going to go to the ballpark. We believe we're going to win, and we're going to execute at a high level and try to win baseball games. But this team towards the end, we sort of embraced the, playing with house money, nothing to lose. And it sort of fit the team's personality a little bit more. So we talked about it. And that's what I said to the guys was, long-term, this is not who, what our makeup is going to be. It's not what our mantra is. But for this club right now, for this last month, it's where we are. Let's embrace it. Let's go with it. And they did.
Yeah, I'm fascinated to hear about how you go, with a college program, when you come in as a new coach and you're trying to establish yourself as a leader, especially when guys have been there, you've got guys playing for you that may have been there for 3 years, or they're going into their fourth year and they're like, hey, I've got 6 months left. Let's not disrupt what I want to do. What is that process like when you take over Penn State and you have to establish their trust and you have to get guys to believe like, hey, I'm making decisions that are best for the team. You might not like it sometimes when I'm sitting you down for a day or here. How do you establish that trust and really establish your leadership style with a new team with guys, 35 guys that maybe you didn't recruit?
Yeah, it's a challenge. It's a challenge for everybody because you start off, at the beginning of the year, you know, down to the simple part of learning everybody's name, right? I mean, right, you get here and you got to meet everybody and nice to meet you. And right, it's different when guys are coming into a program and you've known them since they were 15 years old in the recruiting process, and and they sat in your office with mom and dad, right? You already have that relationship built, right? So you start with that, right? And you start with and you have to create a pattern. The other thing that happens when you have had a program for a while is when you say something to the younger guys and they're uncertain about it, the older guys can be like, all right, hey man, this is how it works. This is what it means. He's been through this. You can trust him, right? All those conversations can happen, and um, but everybody was learning, right? Everybody's learning each other. So one of the things that's really important to me with our guys, I want them to be really, really comfortable being themselves. We talk a lot about learning how to be your authentic self. On the baseball field, we call it identity, right? Um, but to do that, right, and to make sure those guys sort of understand that little bit starts with me, like that they just have to understand that I'm going to be who I am, and that they can trust me. I'm going to love them. I'm going to care about them. And when I am having hard conversations with them, dude, we got to make sure you get to class, or you can work harder than that, or right, we got to make this adjustment to whatever it is we're talking about on the baseball field. You try to early on make them realize and understand that, and talk about leadership style. None of this is ever going to be about me. I don't want it to be about me. And um, I I really tell people, and I really mean it. Like my dream sort of scenario would be, we end up in Omaha, we have a chance to win a national championship, and people look at the program and they don't even know my name. They're like, "Who's the head coach?" Like that's how I sort of, that'd be my dream, honestly. Like the attention on the players, everything's about the boys, and everything that I'm asking to do is for them, right? Even if that conversation is, you're not in the lineup today, right? Sometimes for them is for each individual. Sometimes for them is for the group to get us in a good spot. Because really, this thing is about player development. It's about personal development. And it's about shared experiences, right? It's, these guys a week at the Big Ten tournament and a chance and playing in front of that, those Nebraska fans were unbelievable in the championship. We have 15,000 people in the stands. It's as loud as any place I've ever played. Those are all great shared experiences. I mean, we wish we came up on the right side of it, but when you talk about established culture and how you do that in the fall, you just have to have honest conversations. You have to tell guys when you make mistakes. You have to tell guys when you're wrong. You have to try to make them understand where you're coming from. And you have to listen and understand, right? I would spend a lot of time talking to the guys and then coming back like, all right, man, what'd you get out of that? Or, hey, what'd the boys get from that message? And, there were multiple times during the fall where we would do something. I'd say, hey, man, I didn't like that. We're going to fix that. This is what I thought we were going to do, and I didn't like it. So let's switch it. So just to make them understand kind of where we're coming from and what we're asking them to do is, like I sort of mentioned, it's for the good of the group and for the good of each individual when it applies.
We had John West on the podcast a couple of months ago, and
Superstar kid, isn't he?
Yeah, he is, and he has a certain reverence for you too. He talked about you glowingly, and you mentioned earlier that it was a really hard decision, and now that you're there, it seems like it should have been easy. But I would imagine that was probably the hardest part, is telling your guys you're leaving BC, or telling the athletic director after you had signed an extension that you're leaving. What was that process like for you to, those guys who you obviously loved and loved you, and say, hey, I got to take this other opportunity. It's the best thing for my family.
Yeah, it was a tricky process too, partly because, without getting, we had some sort of family medical stuff that sort of overrode everything in the process that Pat was able to, initially didn't think we were going to be able to address, and that Pat and Vinnie James, I will be forever grateful for them addressing some of our family medical concerns and allowing some medical attention that my family needed to stay uninterrupted, right? So that was, that sort of made that month in there a little bit stressful, because as much as I love coaching college baseball, as much as I love my job, as much as I love my players, family is always going to come first. And if, you got to make sure, for me, my wife and kids, if they're not safe and okay and happy, then nothing else matters, right? So, that was a little bit of a weird holdup for a bit. And once they were able to address that, and, the whole thing happened pretty quickly, very quickly, honestly. From a leaving the players standpoint, that was brutal, right? For better or for worse, I love my guys. And I will tell you, one of the things I said to Pat, like, I was really excited when the contract was signed and I was ready to go. And the only thing I said is, like, I'm like, let me tell the guys at BC before I talk to the guys at Penn State, because I didn't want the guys at BC to hear from anybody other than me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was excited to talk to the team from Penn State, but hearing who your new coach is on social media, while it's not ideal, it's not as devastating as hearing that your coach just left on social media. I was very thankful. The word had gotten out a little bit. The word had gotten to some national reporters, and I really just begged them. I literally told them the time, and I said, just let me start the call first. Let me get to the guys first. And I was very, very grateful that they let that happen. But I will tell, I'm not a guy that, I'm Italian. We tend to get emotional sometimes, but I'm not a cry at press conference guy. I'm not that guy, but I cried pretty hard telling the boys at BC. That was a hard phone. That was a hard Zoom phone call, whatever you want to, we're on Zoom. It was a hard Zoom. Once that call was over, I will always have a great relationship with those boys. I love those boys. But once that call was over, it was full steam ahead at Penn State. And like I said, this place, we were excited about coming here. We were excited about the program and the possibilities, and we were excited about raising a family in State College. And it's been better than we even could have dreamed.
That's great. I know the ACC is recognized as, one of the top conferences in the nation, but it had its challenges for BC. Geographically, there was a lot of travel, to get to, Florida State and Virginia and North Carolina, NC State, all these Southern universities. It's hard to recruit against those schools that have, nice weather 12 months a year. How did you feel about the transition to the Big Ten? How was it different in terms of stacking up against the ACC?
Yeah, I will somewhat disagree with you. I think Boston College is positioned to be in a really great spot to compete in that league. They've shown they can in the past, and going back to Mick Aoki, Boston College has shown, and it will continue to show, that it's a program that can compete in the ACC. I think they're in a really good spot. And yeah, there's travel, but everybody's got travel, right? Not for nothing, you got teams traveling across the country nowadays. So, I would somewhat disagree with you about Boston College. I think Boston College can put itself in a really good spot to compete annually, and I believe Todd will do an unbelievable job there. As far as Penn State and the Big Ten, this is a conference that is investing in baseball, that's growing in baseball. We're adding 4 West Coast teams. We have some great guys and great coaches. And you look at some teams, that maybe, years ago weren't as good, like Rutgers and Penn State. And you look at what Steve is doing at Rutgers and what we're trying to grow here at Penn State. So some of the teams that hadn't been able to compete nationally, you look at Rutgers, they've got a real good case. Some of these, in some of these recent years, that they should have had at large bids, and they will in the future, right? So Steve's doing an unbelievable job here. the investment that Penn State is making in this program. So some of the teams that have struggled, I think are competing at the national level. You look at the teams that have, the Nebraskas, the Illinois, the Indianas, right? We have some elite baseball teams here, right? And then you add, you look at what Tracy's doing in Michigan, and Michigan was in the World Series 6 years ago, whatever that was now. We got some elite programs already hit an unbelievable foundation. Now you add UCLA, you add Oregon, you add Washington. We are poised to become, I would say one of the top 4 conferences in the country. And I think we can creep into that 2 or 3 spot. The SEC is a monster right now, and everybody knows that, right? But I think we can get ourselves in the mix, pretty quickly here. We were a 3-bid league this year. And I really believe we're going to be talking about 7, 8 bids here the next couple of years. I believe that about our conference. And you talk to the guys again, Tracy's going to get Michigan rolling. We all know that. You get these other 4 teams coming in, and Rutgers, and that's not to leave out some of these other programs. What Ben Greenspan's going to do at Northwestern. This is going to be a really, really competitive league, and a league that everybody is going to be really excited about. And the other thing I've learned about this league that I don't think gets enough attention, the fan bases and the crowds have been awesome. And we had multiple games here with 4,000 or 5,000 people. We had Friday nights with 2,000 to 4,000 people. And like I mentioned, and I'll be talking about other programs, crowds, but to play Nebraska, who obviously want to beat, and we have a ton of respect for, in front of those fans were awesome. Like, I can't wait till next time we go play there at that place. So, for kids that want to play in a fun, exciting league, and a league that's got offense, and and I mean, this is gonna be a really fun stretch here in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I forgot UCLA is moving to the Big Ten. I don't think I'll ever get used to that. That's crazy.
Hey, it's Bobby Moran, Director of Athletics at Thayer Academy. You know what? Experience matters, and Thayer Academy's professional coaching staff understands how to work with each student athlete to help them succeed. Our coaches and faculty are committed to ensuring both 5th to 12th graders feel known, connected, and prepared. This is Thayer's secret sauce, nurturing each student to reach their full potential. Here, success is truly a team sport. Are you ready for your child to take the next step? See what Thayer has to offer at thayer.org. That's THAYER.org.
Looking to keep up with all the latest news and information on New England baseball? New England Baseball Journal and BaseballJournal.com are the premier resources for information and inspiration on the New England baseball scene. Have every issue of New England Baseball Journal, the magazine, delivered to your home or office. And don't forget to stay in the game every day with a digital subscription to BaseballJournal.com to receive baseball coverage on clubs, college commits, prep and high school, Division I, II, and III colleges, showcases, rankings, and much more. Get in the game and behind the scenes now by going to BaseballJournal.com. Just click on the subscribe button and start the subscription that is right for you today. New England Baseball Journal is a Seamans Media publication. Seamans Media. Inspiring, informative, insightful.
From a recruiting perspective, we track the guys in, the class of 2025, 26 that are making commitments. And we, obviously we see more guys from New England make commitments to Penn State since you've been there in the last year. Is that something that is happening because you were recruiting them when you were at BC and you just are familiar with these guys? Or do you think that's a strategy that you'll continue to do, as you get more established at Penn State?
Yeah, I mean, New England, we all have our New England roots, right? Myself and Pooch, and we will always be connected to New England. It's the core of our recruiting. Number one for us is the state of Pennsylvania, and we're not going to sort of hide behind that or lie about where we want to go first, right? Mm-hmm. There's other places we're going to hit. Pennsylvania's number one. Pennsylvania's number one because, as I've learned, we take it seriously. Like, as the state university, we want this to be an option for all the top players in the state, right? So we're hitting the state hard. We're being out. And the other thing I've learned, man, two things I've learned about the state. This is a fanatical baseball state. There are great high school baseball coaches in this state. I will tell you this. This has been awesome to talk to these guys and be around them. And I think we all in New England sort of we know about Penn State. We understand the power of the brand. We know that there's 110,000 in the football stadium, but the fandom, the love for this place from the alumni around the state, I mean, it's comparable to anybody in the SEC, and the SEC gets all the attention, but this is, and I've lived in the Deep South, and this is comparable to anything. So, we're going to hit Pennsylvania #1, right? We're going to hit New York and New Jersey because we have our connections in bordering states. And then New England is going to be part of that because of our connections. The other place that we're having a lot of success, and it's somewhat circumstantial, but we have a small little airport here in State College that we will charter out of. But from a commercial flight standpoint, there's 3 direct flights a day from State College right to Chicago, and I didn't even know that. Honestly, I learned that about a month into the job, a couple weeks in the job, when I had to book my flight to the Big Ten meetings. And I just assumed I'd connect someplace or whatever. And they're like, oh yeah, and we got 3 flights a day. And I called Pooch. I'm like, hey man, let's take a shot at the Chicagoland area. And we got 3 premium guys in the 25 class that we think are going to be impact players from that area.
Wow. What was I just going to ask you? It was, hold on one sec. Dave, can you stop? What the heck was I just going to ask you, Mike?
New England recruiting.
Scott Loazzo going to,
Yep, good.
Yeah, go.
Yep.
Okay. We just saw Scott Loazzo go to Dayton to replace Jason King, who's going to be down at Vanderbilt. What was it like coaching with Scott for a year? I know you were looking for some continuity on your coaching staff. How do you think he'll do as he moves on to Dayton?
But, I actually just talked to him a little while ago, right before I got on with you this morning. He's going to crush it. He's awesome. We both talked about this when this went down. Like, Scott wanted to be a Division I head coach at some point. We knew that. We knew in the move. We talked about it, right? And he had felt like he'd come close a couple times and was like, hey man, let's go do this. Let's get this thing going. We both thought, this thing had a chance to really explode, and then we'd give him options. And then with Jay leaving, he gets calling, in a spot where he wasn't looking. They call him and offer him a job, and he was like, we each thought this was going to take longer, but like, it's a head coaching job and it's part of our. So we talked about it, and we both basically agreed that has a chance to be awesome here. We both agreed that we loved working together, that we would crush it here together, that things would be amazing here. And we both agreed that if he wanted to be a head coach, it's hard to pass up on somebody offering you a job as a Division I head coach. So that's really what it came down to. Was like, if this was part of the reason coming here, then, you don't know what 3, 4, 5, you don't know what jobs are going to be open up and where your connections are going to be, and right. And like, and who the AD is, you don't know any of those things. So then it came down to like, all right, man, if this is part of the plan, then to become a head coach in Division I baseball, he really felt strongly at some point that he wanted to take that shot. He was excited about it. Then go get him, dude. Right. And, Scott and I will always be close. I think he's going to crush it there. Jay did an unbelievable job there, and Scotty going there will kind of continue building on what they built. He's a great dude. He's a great baseball coach. We're going to stay in touch and talk a ton through this. Selfishly, yeah, I love being around Scotty. I want to be around him more and coach more. And one of the awesome things that's important to me as we're hiring guys is I want to make sure, I'm really excited about the chance to learn from everybody that I get that I work with. And, I was learning a lot from Scotty. He's going to crush it. He really is. That's a great hire for them.
Yeah, I was wondering about Jay's move from Dayton to become an assistant at Vanderbilt. And I was wondering if it speaks to the changing dynamic in college baseball, where there's going to be these big power conferences. Those are going to be the schools that get the NIL money and the resources. And it's really going to become difficult for mid-majors to retain their players, because the minute a guy, puts up huge numbers, he's going to look to transfer to, one of these power conference schools. Do you think that's going to become more of a trend going forward?
I've known Jay a long time. I didn't talk to him about this move, not in a bad way. I wasn't involved in his decision-making process, so I don't want to speak to his decision. As far as the changing college baseball landscape, like there are very few things that are all good and all bad, right? Like it's just not how things work. This thing is different. College athletics, we are at a spot, and this is not just college athletics, right? I mean, it's not just college baseball. This is college athletics in general. We are at a spot where this is changing more dramatically, more drastically, quicker than probably any time that any of us can remember, right? So, with some of the latest court rulings, and a lot of those decisions are outside of our hands. I don't mean that I'm one of the decision makers. I mean, our hands, like the internal NCAA world, they're coming from judges in court cases, right? So, from a overall standpoint of college athletics, we just have to wrap our head around this is not what it was, and it's going to be different. There's going to be some things that are going to be better and some things that are going to be worse, right? And we all that are in this have to understand that you got to be nimble and you got to work hard. You got to be agile and you got to be able to make adjustments, right? From a college baseball standpoint, college baseball is in the strongest place it's ever been. If you look at television ratings and crowds and the World Series ratings and the level of play, college baseball is in an unbelievable spot. And is there going to be? I mean, the transfer portal's a mess. We can talk about that for a while. It's not ideal. We will handle it a little bit of a different way, I think, than some places, and a little bit differently than we handled it this year going forward. But it's kind of just the world we're living in now, right? So, is that going to be a thing where kids are moving up and coaches are moving up and, potentially, yeah, potentially. I think you're also going to see some kids that look at that. Maybe it's not the risk reward doesn't make sense in some aspects as well. Right. And, but across the board, you're seeing athletic directors invest in college baseball more than they ever have.
Right. How are you handling the transfer portal differently than most schools?
Yeah, I guess I shouldn't say more than most schools. I said more. What I should have said is more than others. Our thought going forward, right, is as we're going to do this, and we hit the transfer portal pretty hard this year. When all said and done, we're gonna, I think it's going to end up being probably 9 out of the portal, it will be a large number for us going forward. The goal as we're building this thing out is our resources will be focused more on player retention than player acquisition, right? That's how we're going to be built this out. We want to be built first on player development. So our goal is to recruit, we have made our living. This is what we've done. And, for all of us here in this program, from different places that we're coming into, have shown that we can develop players at high levels and have players be able to come in, have success, learn, grow, get better, win, and then move forward and play professional baseball. Right. We've shown that over and over and multiple first round picks and multiple pros and multiple big leaguers. So we don't want to lose that. Right. So we want to recruit, high character kids, tough, competitive, workaholic baseball players that are driven academically, that want to play in the big leagues. We want to get them here. We want to help them grow. We want to help them develop, and we want to reward them when they get to that point. So they don't want to look at other places. And then we'll cherry pick from the portal and add the right kid, and maybe the Pennsylvania kid that's a kickback, or maybe the Pennsylvania kid that wants to, and I hate to say this, I don't mean this way, but wants to maybe move up a little bit. And it's not a knock on any programs but it's just where college baseball is, that right. So, the transfer portal will not be our number one focus. Our number one focus will be on player development. And like I said, that summation of that is, and we're going to have resources here. I believe it. Right. So it will be focused on player retention more than player acquisition.
Nice. All right. Well, let's get off the transfer portal and do a more fun segment. We'll do our 3 up, 3 down segment. So our producer, David Yaz, is just going to ask us questions about things like how we fell in love with the sport of baseball. Do you have a couple minutes for that, or?
I do.
Oh, okay. All right. Here's our producer, David Yaz.
3 up, 3 down. Yes, welcome back to 3 Up, 3 Down, 3 secret questions our panelists are completely unprepared for. And Coach, you can go first. I'm going to ask you a question about the knuckleball. It's one of the more fascinating aspects of baseball in that it can be completely unhittable and completely hard to control. Have you ever coached anyone who threw a knuckleball? And in general, if it's possible to be pro or con knuckleball, is it something that you recommend kids take it up if they want to, or is it kind of a fleeting skill that maybe is not so reliable?
That was completely not where I was expecting this 3 up, 3 down to go. I have not coached a knuckleballer at all. And it's funny, the only real experience I had, my first job out of playing professional baseball was with the Red Sox. My title was special assistant to the major league staff, and I was hit fungos, throw BP, help with charts, that kind of stuff. And one of the things that would have to come up, Dana Levangie was the bullpen catcher at the time, when he would catch Wakefield when they were doing whenever the pitchers were doing their flat ground stuff, he would catch them. Nobody else would. So if there ever, and only came up 2 or 3 times, if there was ever a time that he needed to throw his flat ground and Dana wasn't there, it basically fell to me because nobody else would do it. None of their pitchers. And somebody would just call me down like, all right, Bino, you got Wake? And I'm like, and I would just get down there and I would be terrified. My whole goal each time was just not to get hit in the nose. And I mean, I swear, like probably 50% of the time he would throw it, I would miss it, I would run, pick it up, throw it back to him. I mean, it was fairly embarrassing. That's my only real experience with a knuckleball. As far as being pro or con, honestly, that tends to be more of a shot somebody takes in minor league baseball when everything else hasn't worked.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's and once in a while a pitcher in his later years will take it up. When Jeff Reardon was with the Red Sox, I remember he experimented with it, probably because he was losing an inch or 2 on his fastball. But Dan, your thoughts in general on the knuckleball? I
like the knuckleball. I heard the other day, I can't remember what hitter, it was a great hitter, and he said, whenever he would face a knuckleballer, he'd go up there and take his 3 swings and sit back down because he didn't want to overthink it and like start trying to get used to the knuckleball and time it out, or else all of a sudden you're screwing yourself up on the fastball and breaking ball and things like that. So if you can throw a good knuckleball, I don't see why you wouldn't do it.
Yeah, I'm thinking about taking up knuckleball myself at this stage of the game. It's the only way I'm going to make it to the bigs.
Yep.
But probably not. Question number 2, Dan, you can go first. Jarren Duran of the Red Sox has stole home twice already this season, once on a bizarre play when a throw was being appealed to first base. And my question for you is, what's the most memorable steal of home that you either witnessed or were part of or connected with in any way?
I was at a Red Sox-Yankees game in, I don't know what year it was, but Jacoby Ellsbury stole home and the Red Sox ended up like pounding the Yankees that day, and it was a big moment. It was early in the season, and I think it was like at a time where the Red Sox were kind of distancing themselves from the Yankees. So it must have been like 04 or 07 or something like that. But it was probably 07 because Ellsbury wasn't around in 04. Right. That was Damon in center field. But I would say that was the most memorable one I've ever seen.
I remember that one, and it was pretty much a straight steal of home. And I remember he made kind of an awkward slide and kind of hit his head, but it didn't matter. He was so fast, he had beaten it.
Yeah.
Coach, how about you? Any memories of steals of home?
I can't think of any in a game that I've been part of, to be honest with you. I was just trying to go through that, either with the team that I was coaching or managing or the opposing team. I can't actually think of one. Anytime I think about stealing home, the number one thing that comes to my mind is the iconic shot of Jackie Robinson sliding in and stealing home with Yogi Berra trying to tag, and that's the number one thing that jumps in my head.
Yep, that was monumental. My dad was a big Brooklyn Dodgers fan growing up, so he told me about that one. When I watched the film from that, I think he might have been out. but it's more fun that he was safe. So let's leave it that way. All right, final question, and pretty simple one. And Coach, you can go first. What was the best World Series that you can remember?
This is really hard to say. This is really hard to say, being on the New England Baseball Journal. And as somebody, I've become a Red Sox fan, and Red Sox Nation has gotten over the whole thing. But I grew up in New York. You talk about the Brooklyn Dodgers. My dad grew up in Brooklyn. We grew up north of the city. So my dad was a Dodgers fan turned Mets fan. And I was 9 years old in 1986. My dad actually took me to Game 6. We were sitting so far up in the upper deck in left field that when Dave Henderson hit that home run in left field, we couldn't even tell if it went out or not. But that World Series for me, both this, I mean, I was 9 years old. When you're 9 years old and your team wins the World Series, there's nothing like it. And it's funny, my dad, I remember my dad, I want to leave. I'm like almost in tears. And we rooted for the Red Sox growing up because we didn't like the Yankees. So my dad said, hey, we're about to see baseball history. We're going to stay here and cheer on the Red Sox. And then, obviously we know what happened there, but, from a memory and I've lost my dad since then. So memory with my dad, as a young Mets fan, that World Series is number one for me.
Yeah, we usually don't allow that to be brought up, that subject to be brought up on the BasePath podcast, the New England Baseball Journal's podcast. But great story, and it's about your dad.
But here's what you got. Here's why I think you can talk about that now, because if you live in Boston right now and you're basically under 30, you've grown up your whole life with a championship, the Duck Boat Parade, either every year or every other year.
Yeah,
they don't, they don't realize that wasn't a thing. So even the idea of a curse is like, what do you mean? We just, you talk to 30-year-old, kids in Boston right now, and they're like, well, what do you mean? We just win championships all the time. Right. What are you talking about? So that pain that you might feel is not really such a thing anymore.
It's not. You're absolutely right. And the pain should be healed by now. I was a freshman in college in '86. And there were several Met fans in my dorm, which made it all the worse. But I think true Red Sox fans will tell you, yeah, we're spoiled now. We have nothing to complain about. But it still hurts. It's like remembering a tragedy in your life. It's just remembering something so terrible. Anyway, Dan, your thoughts on the best World Series?
The best one I think I can remember is Arizona beating the Yankees with, that was like Curt Schilling, Randy Johnson, Luis Gonzalez, I think got a hit off Mariano Rivera to win it. Did that go 7? I think it was.
I think it did. It was 2001, I think is.
7 jam shot up the middle. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was, in a way, that was when the Yankees' fortunes turned, even though they topped us in, obviously, remember 2003 with Aaron Boone, but they lost the World Series that year. And the Yankees hadn't really blown anything with that edition of the Yankees. And in that, I think pretty sure it was the 7th game that Rivera had a chance to save it. And he fielded a ball and threw it into center field. And it was like, oh my God, what's happening? Are they really going to blow this? And then Gonzalez gets the little blue pit. That's a good answer. Yeah. Anyways, well, you both did very well on 3 Up, 3 Down, despite the mentions of 1986. And tremendous job, Coach. We appreciate it. And I'm sending over some Big League Chew for both of you. You'll get it eventually. Well done. Back to you, Dan, to wrap things up.
Big League Chew, one of our advertisers. Thanks to Mike Gambino for joining us on the BasePath podcast. Rate, review, subscribe to the BasePath podcast on your preferred platform. Thanks to our producer, David Yaz. The BasePath podcast is a Seamans Media production.